Welcome back, everyone. Today it's just me, no Colin, no Daniel. Originally, it was going to be me and Colin. We talked about doing this because we weren't all interested, but maybe it could be interesting to talk about. After I had watched most of the show, Colin went and changed his mind, saying, "Actually, I don't want to, I don't want to cover this." So I ended up watching by myself. I did not want to watch it by myself for entertainment because I had no interest in watching this. So I'm going to put my time to good use and do a review for this because gosh, believe me, I would not be watching this on my own. I don't really watch TV except for stuff we do for the podcast. So I'm going to do a review for this. So obviously we're covering Chad Powers, but for those of you who don't know where this weird show came from, it all starts with quarterback Peyton Manning for the Indianapolis Colts. So he was a quarterback there for a long time. He was the greatest quarterback of his generation, arguably the greatest of all time. After he retired, he was a very marketable player. So what do you do to a marketable player who is very into NFL trivia? You, of course, give him a very low-viewed special on ESPN+. So it was called Peyton's Place, and he would cover obscure NFL trivia. And that show was very popular on ESPN+. So, of course, when Eli Manning, his younger brother, retired, and a good quarterback in his own rights, he had his own show called Eli's Place, where he covered obscure things in college football. One of the obscure things he covered was walk-ons in the college football game. Now, part of the reason why he did this, I think, according to himself, is walk-ons aren't really as popular anymore. College football, like most sports, is becoming its own monster. It's very popular. People are trying very hard to be the best. Walk-ons really aren't a part of that formula anymore. Not that they ever were, but it's even less so. And he wanted to do a video about walk-ons, how it's kind of dying out. NIL is, of course, ruining the sport, but it's also ruining walk-ons. So to talk about walk-ons at college, Eli Manning disguised himself and he gave himself the name Chad Powers. Eli's been a goofy guy, so the whole thing was supposed to be played for laughs. You saw Eli in this horrible makeup and wig. Not horrible, you know what I mean? He looked bad. You know, the crooked nose and all that. And he did this walk-on tryout for a quarterback. That's the position he played. And it was funny because he was acting all goofy, but he obviously as a professional quarterback was good and impressed the assistant coach. And it was funny watching the video where you see the assistant coach get all excited, "Ooh, I think we got ourselves a quarterback," telling it to the head coach, and the head coach is on it. But at the end, Eli revealed that it was just him, Eli Manning. It's funny, he pulls off the makeup, and people are like, "Oh, who are you again?" Because I'm trying to tell you that this was simply a little 5-minute skit that was supposed to be played for laughs to kind of be entertaining, a little historical and informative, but nothing more than a 5 to 10-minute skit. For some reason, they decided to turn this into a 6-episode, about 40-minute per episode TV show, which, based on how the show ended, they plan to turn into a multi-season show. Spoilers, I guess. So yes, it's a show that should not really exist. It reminds me a lot of those SNL movies that would get made based off of popular SNL skits. I remember people talking about them and how the same criticism for those movies applies to this TV show as well. The joke really isn't all that funny when you make the same joke over and over again, and it works better as a 5-minute skit, not a movie or a 6-episode TV show. So to talk a bit about the show, it stars Glen Powell, who plays Russ Holiday / Chad Powers. Russ Holiday is your typical horrible, arrogant, not a good person quarterback. He's in the Rose Bowl or the college football championship game. I forget. I think they call it the Rose Bowl, but it was the college football championship game. He was on Oregon. He was playing Georgia. He, for some reason, on the Hail Mary doesn't throw a pass. He decides to run in, almost scores the touchdown, but drops the ball off at the 1-yard line. And you might think, that is very unrealistic. Who would be so foolish enough to do that? Well, like I said, remember the Indianapolis Colts? They had a player who dropped the ball at the 1-yard line this very NFL season. Usually happens about maybe 1 or 2 times a football season. And the Colts basically lost that game because of the guy dropping the ball. But yes, he drops the ball off. Georgia returns it for a touchdown, and he loses the game in a pretty embarrassing way. And it starts to cause his life to spiral. There was a sickly kid on the sideline who I think was rooting for Oregon. Chad gets into a fight with the dad and starts pushing the kid over, and it becomes a whole ordeal. Very bad publicity for him. And he ends up not getting drafted, and his life spirals. And then this is where the show picks up. A couple years later, I forget the exact number, 5, 7. Point is, enough time's passed. He's a bit older, but he's still not really changed, just trying to get by. And that kid dies, ruins his chance with the XFL, Spring Football League, and then he ends up having to go to Southern Georgia because they're having an open tryout for the quarterback. And you can already see the initial premise for the show, I think, is flawed to begin with. Eli Manning does the Chad Powers for a skit, It's pretty harmless, just pretending to be a quarterback for a college football team's walk-on spot on the team. There was no ill intent for Eli doing that. It was the head coach down. It was more to be more informative. A little fun with how the coach got excited, but it was really low-key. This is a redemption story for Russ Holiday, and it's already flawed because him disguising himself as Chad Powers is only going to hurt people in the end. And you see this at the last episode too, how much damage having a fake player on your team could do to a program. It's going to ruin the head coach, ruin the assistant coaches, ruin the school's reputation. It's going to hurt so many people just to give him a second chance at football. It's an incredibly selfish idea to do, which is why I think the show is not all that great. His way of getting redemption is to play more football and put more people at risk as opposed to just hurting himself as what he normally did. If he really wanted to redeem himself, and I know you could say that destroys the premise of a TV show, that's entertaining. True, but I think there are other ways to set up the Chad Powers persona. I think having a guy risk everything to, what would his end game be? Reveal himself to be Chad Powers? You would screw over the school. You can't continue your life as Chad Powers. Eventually someone's going to find out, as we do see throughout the show. He's not careful with how he does things. So that alone sets me off about the show. I wasn't really a fan from the outset. The initial first episode didn't really do itself any favors. And the Chad persona itself, I was not a fan of. Now, I can understand the first scene I thought was kind of funny when Chad shows up to coach Ricky, and he's acting all weird because he's on the spot trying to improv. Not a very smart guy, not quick on his feet, so his improv was pretty bad. As you go throughout the show, Chad's improv and the way he interacts with people becomes less and less funny to the point where it becomes a distraction, in my opinion, my unbiased opinion. It gets to the point where it's so uncomfortable, you wonder how could this person can't be real. No person acts like this and gets around in life like this. His nonsensical answers to everything, how he can't really seem to talk like a normal person, he can't communicate like a normal person, everyone has to try to decipher every little thing he says. It gets to the point where it starts to not become funny, and to me it gets more frustrating. Like, how could someone like this exist? It's becoming, not that it's supposed to be a realistic show, but the joke, it's not funny anymore. The weird thing Chad says, it's not funny how people are like, what is wrong with this guy? Was he dropped on his head several times as a baby? So the Chad character himself, I know he's supposed to be nice, but he wasn't even all that nice. He just came off as incredibly unsettling. Like, if he wasn't playing football, you think this guy's gonna like kill you and eat you, not be a football player. But in that first episode, just a quick detour, we meet several other main characters. Coach Ricky Hudson, the coach's daughter, who, funnily enough, is played by Mark Sanchez's wife, mainly known for playing quarterback for the Jets, losing in a championship game to the Indianapolis Colts, and, to bring it really full circle, her husband, Mark Sanchez, for some reason, Indianapolis calling a Colts game because he's now an announcer, decides to get into a fight with the delivery driver and gets stabbed and put in the hospital. So I don't know what is happening in Indianapolis or how it's the center of everything when it comes to this show and our universe right now, but it seems to be Indianapolis is at the center of everything for some reason. And yes, her husband got into a fight and got stabbed. I know I shouldn't be laughing, but just the fact that some multi-millionaire quarterback getting drunk in the middle of the night and deciding to fight a delivery driver, it just amuses me. Like, he's some tweaker. So we meet the coach. We meet the head coach, Jake Hudson, who is, I think, from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I'm pretty sure Colin will play a funny clip from him.
No touch! They are not toys! They're figurines!
He's head coach of the team under stress because he and his wife are having marital trouble. Well, there is affairs later on. And the other two assistant coaches don't matter. And the mascot, Danny, who ends up becoming Russ's best friend and essentially the one who helps him with his disguise. The head coach, his main overall plot line is that he's stressed from being a head coach, is pretty competitive. They almost try to make his wife sympathetic, saying how he's not around to be with his wife, but his wife is so unlikable that you can understand why he's not around his wife. And she cheats on him, so she's very unsympathetic. You feel more for the coach, who also has a heart attack. You feel the stress for the job because I don't know if that's the athletic director or some higher up on the board for the school, is constantly pressuring him to be good. And granted, it's college football in the South, I think they're in the SEC, so always a lot of pressure to be good. Speaking of the character from the board or whatever she's from, I didn't really like her. She liked to say a lot of vulgar things. And that's one of the things about the show. A lot of the humor was the characters trying to be vulgar and saying really weird and gross things. I'm not really a fan of that. I feel like it's a crutch for bad writers who, I guess I forgot to mention this. One of the creators for it is not just Glen Powell, the star, but also Michael Waldron, who I know Colin will probably say how much he hates him because he worked on a lot of the Marvel slop and not really a good writer. And you can see it as evident in this show as well. The humor, again, I didn't really care for the gross humor. The Trisha, she exemplified that humor, was not really a fan of. Every time she talked, basically said something weird or gross, tried to make you uncomfortable. Never landed well with me, and I didn't really care for her. So we get to the coach's daughter, Ricky, where they're almost trying to set up a slight romance between between her and Russ Holiday and Chad Powers, really. But it does not come off believable at all whatsoever because it said how Chad acts, how he doesn't act like a human at all. He acts completely insane, completely unlikable to the normal person. The little love romance that's budding. No normal person watches those interactions and think, wow, I could see those two liking each other. Especially when you know that it's not really Chad, it's Russ Holiday pretending to be Chad. So even if there were to be a romance, you know, there's no way this can last. And we get to that at the end of the season where Coach Ricky ends up figuring out that Russ Holiday's Chad Powers because she runs into him. I think they're playing Tennessee at the hotel. Why is he at Tennessee? That's very odd. Why is Chad Powers driving a Cybertruck? Puts it together, sees his tattoo, and is wondering why this guy's there. And you see when he gets confronted, Russ tries to play the love card, saying, I think there's a spark here. And she's like, no, you're crazy. You're a psycho. Like, who disguises himself as a football player for what? To what purpose? To regain your career? It's insane. And that's the completely normal reaction to all of this. I think her reaction to finding out that Russ was Chad Powers is probably one of my favorite scenes in the show, just because, not to say it's realistic, but I feel like her reaction, it was not as there. It was like, oh, yeah, it's crazy, but I love you. It's like, no, you're completely insane, and I really don't like you. But I did like the heel turn also in that scene from Russ Holiday where she was saying that Coach Ricky was going to say, I'm going to destroy you. And he goes, you try to destroy me, I'm bringing everything down, so you better not destroy me. Kind of changing the dynamic in that relationship where now he kind of has more of the leverage because, not that I'm not sure how much he's going to use it against her, but he's saying, if you bring me down, I will bring down everyone with me, so be careful with what you do. Nice little heel turn for him. But one heel turn which I did not like was the backup quarterback, Jerry. He's treated like a punching bag and just a joke the entire season. When you meet him, he's like running and doing sprints. They keep having him do weird things. He's the butt of the joke the entire series. He loses his job, plays it off normally, and for some reason, the last episode, Chad was going to be the starter. The coach has a heart attack and is brought to the hospital. Chad doesn't show up for the trip over, which usually means you're not going to play usually, but Chad ends up showing last second and ends up be able to play, and that upsets Jerry a lot for some reason. There's no real build up to this. Again, Jerry was treated as the butt of the joke the entire series, had no character, was just a punching bag. He treated losing his job with grace, did not care at all whatsoever, and then for some reason at the very last second, they try to tease a Jerry heel turn when Jerry's mad at Chad Powers and wants to ruin him. It's completely out of left field. It's just very odd, and I don't know where they're going to go with this. Not that I really care to find out, but it seems like a complete waste of time. You set this guy up to be a punching bag. He's not really villain material. It's almost a new character at that point. The Jerry we saw from episodes 1 through 5 is not the Jerry we see in episode 6. It's essentially a new character. But one of the things that was bothering me too is that I did not know this they were planning to have. I don't think they talked about it until after the season finished a few days ago when I'm recording this. But as I got to episode 6, I began to wonder, how are they going to end this? Because this seems like a really weird place to end it. Right after Coach gets a heart attack. I mean, maybe they could have had it end tastefully where he realizes that his actions are hurting more people and he should hang it up. He became a better person. He doesn't have to keep going on with Chad Powers. That would have been a more tasteful ending, but they decide to double down, especially when we got to the scene on the bus when I like the scene, but I was also thinking at the back of my mind that there's 10 minutes left, and you click on your screen, you see there's 10 minutes left for this. How could they wrap everything up in 10 minutes? And as you get to the end of the episode, they don't. There's no wrapping it up. They're actually teasing more of Chad Powers, which I don't know about you, but I don't really care to see more of Chad Powers. To really surmise my point, I do not think the show is really all that good. It's not horrible. It wasn't unwatchable. I just think it's overall pointless and not all that entertaining. I only watched it to do this review. I would have dropped it or not watched it at all if I didn't feel compelled to finish it after 5 episodes in for the review, or because Colin told me to do it. I'm not a fan of the humor. I think the story is overall pointless. Russ Holiday is never going to be able to get to any sort of meaningful redemption by being Chad Powers. The story is not going to be satisfying. I'm calling it now. The closest thing we got was when he went to his dad and apologized, and Dad can kind of tell that he kind of got better. He's changing as a person, becoming a better man, and he could have walked away from all this and really been the better man and just left. Yeah, sure, might have left some damage, but it's better than continuing the Chad Powers persona and just pushing that boulder further and further up the hill. So when eventually he can't push up anymore and it goes rolling down, there's gonna be more damage. That's essentially what Chad's gonna do to everyone around him. And the tease is just, it's not really, for me, it's not going to get me to want to continue watching that. Sure, Chad's still kicking. Now Jerry's going to be a villain. Who cares about Jerry? He's treated as a joke the entire season. If every other character in the show treats him as a joke, why should I, the audience member, take him seriously as a villain? It's just not very well thought out by these writers. I mean, they write for Rick and Morty, so what can you expect? But some odd things about the show. In the very first episode, they have a cameo from the Hawk Tuah girl, which I thought was incredibly odd and off-putting. Just even though she's from a meme over a year ago when the TV show aired, why would you bring her in? I mean, I looked it up. Apparently, when they started filming or writing, it's when this got popular. So I can only imagine what idiot thought it'd be funny to have her in the show. But it was not very funny. I did not find it funny. I can't imagine many people found it funny. It's like old news, dude. Especially with the controversy involving her. You think that you would cut her from the show? Didn't she have a crypto meme rug pool that cost people tons of money? And I'm pretty sure she's getting investigated or sued. Point is, controversial, not a funny joke. Now a dated joke. Why would you do that? I thought it was funny that Russ Holiday's dad is played by Toby Huss, who was Cotton Hill, who from King of the Hill, and everyone loves Cotton Hill from King of the Hill. And of course, Eli Manning, the man behind Chad Powers, had a cameo at the end of the third episode when he played Ole Miss. That was Eli Manning's alma mater, so little fun little cameo for that. Some other little odd things, or not odd, they didn't go too much into the X's and O's of football, which I know you can't for a show like this, but I thought it was funny when, as me, the person who knows a little bit too much about football and all about how people play football, when they're talking about beating cover two, Coach Ricky has like the most basic play imaginable. Even kids playing Madden know how to beat cover two with those pass plays. It just comes off as they're trying really hard to make her seem like she's smart, but what it really does is make the other coaches seem dumber if they don't have a play in their playbook to beat cover two. It's one of the most basic defensive coverages. It's like saying you have a cover three beat or a cover four beat. It's like, well, yeah, you've got to, right? You'd hope so. That also leads into the very first episode when they introduce her. She's upset she can't get her play in, and the quarterback coach is like, well, I can't get my play. What makes you think you, the assistant coach, is going to get a play in over me, the quarterback's coach? Like, what are you, crazy? And it's supposed to try to make you sympathize with her, but if you know anything about football or any sort of form of hierarchical organization or structure, that structure matters, and they're not going to let some lowly person just try to jump the line and get to the top and start putting their place. And usually you kind of want to work your way in. It's not a perfect system, but I understand it. And his roommate, the mascot, he was okay. Again, said a lot of weird things. He was, I guess, very sassy and whatever, saying all those weird stuff that he would say, but overall, okay. I can understand why Russ is nicer to him because he's the only one that's helping him almost unconditionally. I know he says because he's a little bit of a psycho too, so I guess that's why they go well together, but overall okay as a character. Didn't bother me either way. One character I thought we would see more of was the number one receiver. I don't even remember his name because of how little he appeared. I think it was in the second episode where he was yelling at Jerry, and I think it was during the tryout where he threw a pass and the guy ran the wrong route, and you saw Chad like, come on, you gotta run the right route. You thought there'd be more of a dynamic between those two, and there really isn't. The receiver is basically cut from the show. Not cut, but he's not really giving any scenes. I guess he's not as important. Most of the stuff's given to the assistant coaches, the head coach, Coach Ricky, Chad, and the roommate. And even for a show that has only 6 episodes, it feels like they waste some time too. The first episode and the second episode, okay, you have him trying to figure out, you set up the show, you have him go to the school, he makes the tryout. Second episode, he tries to be the starter, ends up losing. Third episode, all right, he ends up winning the game for them. But the fourth episode, it's about he loses the glue for the costume. They have to run around Knoxville. Yeah, they're in Tennessee to get the glue for his thing. And they just have a bunch of shenanigans. And I know the point of the episode is to kind of humble Chad that he needs his friend Danny, and they end up working together at the end to work things out. But for 6 episodes, I was imagining that. Granted, I was thinking this was one season. You think that they would spend more time trying to think of other ways to humble him, like seeing maybe how people like Chad, which you do get a little later on, how people are more like Chad, that maybe he could live this life when he's done being Chad Powers. But they don't really go all that far, mainly because they're planning to have more seasons. Because that's the thing too, there's supposed to be redemption for Russ, but I don't think the season goes as far as it should. Granted, all of this is a problem because they are planning on having multiple shows. They kind of kneecap themselves. Instead of trying to have a good first season that has open to a second season, they said, okay, we're going to have multiple seasons and end the show on a cliffhanger, which is really my biggest problem. This really shouldn't exist. It's a 5-minute skit. They turn into 6 episodes and they don't even finish there. They want to have even more time dedicated to this ridiculous concept. I don't really know what they're thinking. I know the reception is pretty mixed. I'm not a fan of it. I'm pretty sure Colin's not a fan of it. He'll always say either way. Daniel has not watched it. I don't he'll ever watch it because he has no interest. I don't know how well the viewership is for this. I don't know if we'll even get a second season. I know the actor's pretty popular right now, so that could help. But if we ever get a second season, I have a hard time seeing we'll ever get a third season. I don't really think it's worth watching from many different perspectives. If you're a fan of football, a lot of football action, it's not really all that entertaining. I don't think it's all that funny. I don't think it's all entertaining. The characters aren't that great. To me, it's just a very mid show that doesn't really need to exist, which to me demotes it even more. So all that being said, this has been the Unbiased Opinion. I have been Craig, and we'll see you next time. Bye.